Why are you running for City Commission?
So, I'm that neighbor that when there's a problem that arises in the neighborhood, I've lived in the second ward my entire adult life, so for over 30 years, and I just have always found myself being that person that's kind of organizing when there's a problem or a project that happens, whether it's, I live just a few blocks from here, so if there's a crime issue or a parking issue or, a park needs help, then I'm that neighbor that kind of organizes things and gets things done. And because I was that person, I helped out at my son's school and ended up on the Grand Rapids Public School Board. I kept just kind of working and found out that I was pretty good at public office. I was pretty good at problem solving, having a lot of backbone, and managing taxpayer dollars through a lot of constraints and getting a lot done. So through encouragement from a lot of folks, including the former superintendent and mayor, said, your leadership's needed at City Hall. And the neighborhood association, they were like, well, you'll be a value add at City Hall. So I made the decision to run.
If elected, what's your top priorities?
Well, we have a housing issue in Grand Rapids, which comes in part from some very great things. We have a lot of millennials moving back to our city because there's a lot of vibrancy and economic boom going on in our community. But we want to make sure that that's not excluding people to be able to live in our community. So it's a real crisis, and I think we need to treat it as such and look at every single tool and opportunity we have to ensure that we have housing for everybody.
Another big issue in front of the commission these days, improving relations between the police and community. What thoughts do you have on that?
So this is also a very substantial issue. I mean, public safety is one of the key functions of a municipality in a city. I've worked with public safety issues over the last 20 years right where I live and recognize how important it is to have a safe community. I'm really proud of the fact that I have the Grand Rapids police officers' endorsement, and I believe I have that because I came in and talked about the leadership I had with employees at Grand Rapids Public Schools. I came on at a time when teachers were really being questioned, and it was quite controversial, and we had a superintendent that was speaking quite critically, but there were some real issues around trust with teachers as there are with policing. But you can't get folks to do a difficult job, to do it well, to have the right people go into it if they don't feel supported and trusted. There has been a consistent request from the police department and the community for more resources going for community policing. And I believe that if that contributes to addressing the trust issues in our community, that could be a value add. Now, I'm no stranger to the structural issues on why there is mistrust with the police, why communities of color have experienced more policing than white communities for multiple reasons. There's lack of opportunity in our community for kids. I was one of the first ones to come out for decriminalization because I saw youth of color being arrested at a higher rate for small crimes that ended up changing the direction of their life because of their arrests, and didn't feel that was productive towards helping those young people become very strong, productive people within our community. So there's a lot of issues at hand. I'm eager to step in and lead. I'm not afraid of difficult conversations. And I believe with a new police chief that we have an opportunity to heal some of those trust issues, to put really good policy in place, and to get some young people of color to join the police force and really make it the best public safety Grand Rapids could possibly have.
You mentioned community policing, and there's a divide. The current city commission has leaned more towards using the officers that they now have instead of adding additional officers. Where do you fall on that?
So I was present when they did the staffing audit that made the case that we had adequate staffing, that we needed to shift some of the administrative work that sworn officers did to non-sworn personnel. And that makes sense on a lot of levels. I also was present to the Heartside Quality of Life study that Letitia Lipscomb led, and the number one request from those folks was full-time community police officers. So I know that the city manager has reallocated to add more people in that position, But I also hear Chief Payne talking about feeling the pinch of resource and the difficulty to cover all areas because staffing levels aren't where they're at. So I keep an open ear. I mean, my job, if elected, is to listen to multiple stakeholders, and in the end, it will be a recommendation from the Chief of Police going to the city manager in a budget. So.
We talked about affordable housing, another issue, and the other issue facing the commission right now is representation on the commission. Mm-hmm. There is some talk, a citizens group has launched the whole movement to try to expand the city commission to 8 wards, 1 commissioner each. Where do you stand on that?
So I'm really excited about the conversation. I think it was instigated by a historical book about the strike, the furniture strike, and I read that book and kind of had the same questions. It was an aha. This is why we have the current structure for representation. And so it's kind of helpful to know the reasons why it was structured and to see if those reasons are contributing to how we exist and are represented right now. So the questions are great. I think we should always have an active conversation about how we're being represented and is this the best way to structure our representation. So I'm in full support of asking the questions and doing an exploration of what it would look like to have more city commissioners or to have more wards. So I think that there's a lot of, before we just jump in and do it, I was glad it wasn't on the November ballot because I think there's opportunity to do a little bit more exploration about whether the current proposal will actually accomplish what they're hoping to accomplish. And that's more diverse representation, more voter engagement, more active representation, and I'm not 100% there that that's what this will accomplish, mainly because I have questions that need to be answered. You know, are we going to do it geographically? Are we going to do it by census? Have other cities that have had similar structures of government experienced more voter engagement, more community engagement, more active representation? There's a cost involved. There's going to be possibly more commissioners if we have 8. And then having served on the Grand Rapids Public Schools Board of Ed, I also have a governance question. Will it contribute to a higher functioning governing body? We don't have a strong mayor, we have a city manager, and we're having smaller wards and multiple commissioners. Will that contribute to being able to create a vision and hold a city manager accountable and guide a city manager, or will it make it more difficult? At some point I'll have a strong opinion, but I think we've got opportunity right now to explore it a little bit further, but I'm excited about the conversation.
End of the interview, and each candidate gets an open mic, open camera, if you will, to talk about some of the things we may not have talked about during the interview. So it's yours.
Well, serving in public office is hard work if it's done well. You have to have a lot of backbone. You have to make tough decisions. You have constraints always. You have constraints on what you can do, what's in your tools, how much money you have to work with to maintain public safety, maintain public infrastructure, to innovate for the future, to sustain what you already have. I have a lot of experience having done that through tremendous constraints at Grand Rapids Public Schools and accomplished quite a bit in that. I am passionate about my home, the second war of the last 35 years. I've knocked over 6,000 doors at this point, and it's been humbling and enriching to be on people's front porches, to meet all the folks that live in my ward, and I am eager to get to work and to represent every single one of you that I've met over the last 10 months.